Let's talk about Respect. I don't know if this needs to be a super long review, but I went to go see Respect, directed by Liesl Tommy, a South African director with not a lot of credits to his name at this point, but I think after seeing this movie, there's definitely a lot of potential. There's some really interesting choices and shots. This is the Aretha Franklin biopic. Jennifer Hudson plays Aretha Franklin, and Aretha Franklin herself, prior to her passing, said that if biopic was ever made of her, she would want Jennifer Hudson to play her. So definitely very cool to see her in this role. We're getting this just a few months after the season of Genius Aretha Franklin,
Mhm.
starring Cynthia Erivo, wrapped up, and I started watching that. Did not finish it quite yet, but um, knew some of the storylines that played out in Respect going in because I had watched a few episodes of that. Aretha Franklin, by any measure, had a amazing life, and I think the fact that her life is so big and there's so many aspects of it that play to uh why like why some of the more dramatic things happen in her life down the road almost makes it really hard, I think, to do a good biopic of her in a concise way.
Right.
Like this really should have been like a 4-hour movie if you were going to do it right, it almost feels like.
And it's not like the movie's short, it's 2.5 hours. But does this try and do the whole story as opposed to like a specific piece of life?
Yeah, so it ends after her 1972 live album, which was her most successful album. It was also a gospel album that she recorded at a church that she visited when she was younger. But it tells her whole life story from that point, from childhood up to that point. And it has some flashback moments and stuff like that. But I left the movie feeling like they touched on a lot of different things, and I don't know if they ever really gave any of them enough time. But it seems like the theme that they're trying to get out of Respect was, in order for Aretha Franklin to really like become the artist she was, to truly be the artist she was meant to be, she had to really find herself, and faith and family were the way that she did that. And I think that message is communicated effectively. But like any music biopic that tries to examine the whole life story of artists, and usually artists that they're doing biopics about have very troubled lives in one way or another, or at least have parts of their lives that are troubled. Um, there's a lot of up and down in this. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of her being in an abusive relationship and getting out of an
Hmm.
abusive relationship. With Ted White, played by Marlon Wayans, and he's truly despicable. Like he actually got reaction out of people in my theater, guffaws, people snickering, like people being very responsive to him on screen. So in that case, nice to see Marlon Wayans getting a serious role and kind of nailing it. Um, I just feel like the movie was long, and maybe not long for effective reasons. But man, some of the scenes, and probably the scenes you could guess, were fucking dynamite. Like the first time that they write Respect together, she has like 9 albums before she finally writes Respect, right? And these albums are all kind of cookie cutter for the time, boring covers of other songs. And when she finally like goes to the South, is playing with these white guys who are like this funk, recording band, and they start making music, and she's finally taking the lead. It's like everything comes together, and the scene is just really, really great. And I wish that for a person who seems to have been really just a leader, a game changer in so many aspects outside music, that the music scenes weren't the only part I was leaving being like, that was really awesome. And that's, I think,
Hmm.
where maybe it falls short for me. But
It honestly sounds a lot like the United States versus Billie Holiday from earlier this year,
hmm,
where like the talking points are almost the same. It's like it's kind of a long-winded biopic that tries to achieve too much, but a lot of the set piece scenes are really effective due to the strength of our central performer. Billie Holiday's case, that was Andra Day. In respect, of course, is Jennifer Hudson, who I would say is like just kind of like the default choice for something like this.
Right.
Like obviously, she won
She
the
got the
Oscar way
pipes.
back for Dreamgirls, but like she's the best of the best for something like this, so it
Mhm.
makes perfect sense. And she is pegged right now as a Best Actress uh, nominee. Of course,
Mhm.
we're pre-award season, but that's the early expectation. So, do you think this is a performance that is in the running?
Yeah, it's I was thinking about this when I left the theater yesterday. I think it's certainly good enough to be nominated. We're in a stacked year, and I was trying to think of what other performances feel almost certain to be nominated next to her. The only one I could definitely think of was Gaga for House of
Gucci,
Gucci, but
yeah.
there's if I read
Chastain,
the list,
Isa Tammy Faye is being pegged as well.
that was
Um,
another one that came to mind. There
yeah,
was, but it's just the sort of thing where I think it just depends on how strong the year is, because I don't think this will end up being the best of the year, but I think it's certainly nomination worthy. So I mean, she'll definitely get a Golden Globes nomination for whatever that's worth. So
yeah.
best musical or comedy, probably.
I'm sure this is gonna come out soon, but people that have seen both and people that really know Aretha Franklin's story, which performance and which product do people like more? Cynthia
Mhm.
Erivo and Genius Aretha, or Jennifer Hudson in respect?
Yeah,
Wouldn't be surprised if it's more down the middle than people say, because like the Genius shows are not like the most widely celebrated shows, but they're still vehicles for a central performance, just like most biopics are. So
yeah.
be interesting to
I
see how that goes.
I think like my final word on it is I think this was a good enough biopic where I wouldn't say it was like an injustice to Aretha Franklin anyway, but I think it's just the sort of thing where she was so much larger than life that like it was hard. This is like almost an impossible task to make
Yeah.
a perfect biopic around it. So, admirable job done by all.